Freedom as a challenge. This is the idea that prompted me to call upon you. Freedom as challenge. This is tied to the problem of the relation between knowledge and freedom. I'd like to say that very often today we see people complaining about the loss of freedom and blaming authorities for this. And I'm afraid that people who are criticizing the authorities, often, I think, fairly identified as globalist authorities. Ah, la comédie. La comédie, c'est une comédie. That was, well, these people are not recognizing the source of the problem. If certain authorities, tyrannical or otherwise, are there, that and that they're acting successfully, that is because they have the opportunity that is handed to them by, well, people, yeah. And okay, there was a problem in, perhaps you could say, in education. There was a problem in misconstruing, yeah, the proper relation between knowledge and freedom. Knowledge, science, wisdom, whatever you want to call it. Yeah? And this calls to mind Faust. Yeah? And Faust, we know, had a problem. He had a lot of knowledge, he had a lot of science, a lot of expertise, yeah? But he had no freedom. He was somehow trapped by this knowledge that he had acquired, that he had accumulated. And so, well, he exposes himself to evil. Yeah? We know that we have had Nazi leaders who were engineers, doctors, psychologists, name it, yeah, scientists. So they had all kinds of knowledge, yeah, but somehow this knowledge did not spare them the problem of evil. In other words, they were not capable of making good choices. In other words, they wasted their freedom. They had a problem with freedom. Yeah, they couldn't face. They didn't really face this challenge of freedom as well in the best of ways. Yeah, shall we say? Their knowledge then was not sufficient. This did not suffice them to make good use of their freedom. They made bad choices. And this calls to mind also Paul. St. Paul tells us that, well, I know the good, but somehow I do the evil. Yeah? I do evil. I take the evil path, even though I know the good. It is not enough to have knowledge. Knowledge does not solve the problem of freedom. And we see this problem also in Dostoevsky's Grand Inquisitor. Yeah, the Grand Inquisitor tells Jesus, who comes back in this Ivan's dream, he says, you know, so people are just not ready for freedom. As soon as they will maybe fight for it, but as soon as they have it, they'll give it away. They'll give it, because all they're looking for is somebody to tell them what to do. An expert, today we might say, yeah, an elite. So it seems to me that people who are trying to warn, those few who are trying to warn the people at large that they're being duped, that they're being manipulated, yeah. These people are trying to enlighten the folk, to show them the good statistics, or to reason, and to give them the knowledge. Today we speak so much about information, we feed them all of this knowledge or information, even worse, and as if that were enough for people to escape evil. In other words, evil, the wrong path of life that leads away from the good. And the good is the good, well, primarily the good for the human being, right? The good that we seek, that we desire by nature. And I fear that there's been a terrible misconstruction of these two poles, as if you could have knowledge, yeah, good knowledge that will solve the problems, yeah, whether it comes from the objectors or from the authorities. You see, that will solve problem, and they will allow people to be free. And so we're underestimating this challenge of freedom. Freedom is not something anybody can give you. It is a challenge that we face, and it's very difficult to face it. It's an heroic enterprise to face and live out this freedom. Knowledge is not enough. We need something more, and I mean it's going to be very tough to regain access to a proper understanding of these two poles, knowledge, science, and freedom, their original interaction, so as to save us from evil. It's a great challenge that we all face, and it's not going to be enough to have this so-called knowledge, yeah, Faustian knowledge, whether it comes from the authorities or it comes from the lanceur d'alerte. It's not going to be enough to move people to face freedom. Now, is it possible is it realistic? Is it reasonable to expect this kind of heroism from people, à la Jeanne d'Arc? You know, is it, especially when it's freedom becomes more and more demonized as something that, in fact, we don't need. All we need is the scientific expertise. All we need is knowledge. Knowledge will spare us the trouble of freedom. We don't have to face and live out that challenge of freedom.
There, also, the kind of knowledge you're talking about is equivalent to power. Wouldn't you say?
Well, misconstrued, yes. Misconstrued Faustian knowledge.
Right, the science and so on. And with this power, you can do all sorts of things. Therefore, you can have control over things. And people mistake this power and control over certain things as it's confounded somewhat with freedom. Because freedom and power aren't equivalent. It's the famous somebody chained to a wall in prison can be freer in their mind than some fabulously rich tyrant.
Well, you know, the early modern notion that we hear this sometimes, that knowledge is power. Well, really, knowledge is empowerment. That is to say, it allows you, and the power to do what? I think that ultimately the early modern project entails this notion of knowledge as the power to escape evil. And we have the power to transcend and solve the problem of evil. So somehow this power, whatever guise it comes, yeah, it could come in various guises, yeah, but this possession, something that you have, yeah, that's something that you have in stock. So you store something under whatever, yeah, guise. It could be in data, it could be information, whatever you want to call it, money, perhaps even in a way. That's something that you have stocked. This will spare you the trouble. This will solve the problem of freedom. You know, and the classics had this major problem, but they recognized that freedom, well understood, was for heroes, was a heroic challenge. The moderns realized they basically tell us, forget about it, because it's not going to solve the problem.
It's like the Straussian distinction between the older view, which put character first,
Yeah.
and the modern view, which puts systems, or to put it another way,
Yeah.
control, and therefore
Yeah.
power
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and so freedom is character.
You don't need that anymore.
Right, but but this heroism that you're talking about, I mean, it's maybe not equivalent to, but it certainly starts with having character.
Yes, character is a
Well,
is a fine term, but yeah, sure, is a good way to
and
approach it. I think.
being able, standing for something
Yeah.
other than, you know, the rights you have, the power you have,
Yeah, yeah. But it has to be rooted.
You have.
Yeah, you want to root it. Of course. Now look at, for example, example in the sense of model. Yeah, Socrates. Now I mentioned Saint Paul, and we know that very often the two are pit one against the other. Saint Paul says, "I know the good, and yet I do evil," and Socrates seems to tell us that you know, knowledge of good is not a means; it's an end, and it seems to be um, you know, untouched by evil. Yeah. And now that we won't exhaust this problem, but I think that there's something important about Socrates, something to reconsider. First of all, just very plainly, yeah, Socrates tells us that he does not have knowledge, yeah, that he doesn't have knowledge, and yet he seems to be aware that his way of life, yeah, his heroism, is well justified. Yeah? His heroism is more important to him than any kind of knowledge, although that he may have, although the heroism does point to knowledge somehow. And knowledge seems to be for him ultimately a communion with the good. Yes.
Socrates informs us that the oracle at Delphi said that Socrates was the wisest man in Athens.
Yes, but that's not saying much considering the people who were around him.
Well, I don't know.
There was nobody wiser than him. Nobody wiser than him. Nobody who was wiser. So he wanted to find somebody wiser than him. Well, he wanted
the wiser.
Well, dans les pays des aveugles, le borgne est roi. So in the country, in the nation of blind men, the what would you call them?
In the land of the blind,
yeah,
the one-eyed man is king.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The wisdom, as you said about Socrates,
Yeah.
yes, it's not enough. The wisdom is not enough. The knowledge is not enough. The power is not enough.
Yeah.
And it's very scary to say anybody cannot be an hero like Ajax or like Hector.
Like Socrates.
Like Socrates, of course. But to answer it at your talk, I mean maybe it's necessary to build some attractive response or shape of life. You talk about way of life, and it's necessary maybe to permit to give the possibility to the I don't what kind of thought I this kind of problem is very general, right? Very, we just cannot talk about a vague response because this kind of problem are very deep, very complex, and I thought maybe like like a small peasant, you have to ou charpenteur, like Jesus.
You have to what?
A carpenter, carpenter.
Oh, a carpenter.
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 Yes, to build a small, step by step, another universe, another possibility, and to propose this and to wait if.
Do you mean steps towards heroism? Un chemin vers l'héroïsme?
Yes, it's a good idea. Yes, it's a good image.
So then how? What then is the beginning of heroism in the situation where we are so seduced by power?
Nice. It's a good question. Maybe it's for myself, for instance, I try to react about some problems in the world. I try.
Well, Lucien,
but
you, as Leo Strauss would say, you're someone willing to stand alone and fight alone. You have critiqued the most famous and popular philosophers in France. And you've made an enemy of the vast majority of people who study philosophy and sociology in France because you've done that.
Yes, so, but now
that's heroic.
Yes,
but it's just
maybe
it's just a matter of writing books and essays but thinking and you have the character to do that thinking, and very few people do, even if you're wrong.
Yes,
because the other people, they're all going along with this thing, so whether they're wrong or right, it requires no character.
Yes, but in the beginning, you remember me that in the beginning I don't believe I don't know yes, I don't know write about this in the beginning. I want to write about the mankind, what is the man, who is the man? It's a very ambitious question.
And philosophical anthropology.
Yes, anthropology, yes. And my teacher said, no, it's too large.
Mostly it's too precise.
Yes, and
because that is the problem.
But, of course, but I gave for him a draft, and he said, I looked, you wrote about postmodernism. It's very interesting. You have to dig this way in first place, and not to to think you are able you have the possibilities like Bergson. He said to me, you want to write like Bergson, but not yet. You have to wait. And in the first step, you have to fight against postmodernism, etc. But I disagree with that. I very disagree, and it's why it's my problem. And no,
You
I want
did
to
agree?
say, it's not my mainly purpose, because for me this kind of philosophy is nothing. It's pretentious to say that, I suppose, but when I read Foucault, Derrida, or so on, for me, comparing with Platon, Aristoteles, Leo Strauss, etc., it's nothing. It's
Yeah.
why I wrote just 15 pages in my draft. 50, not 15, 50 pages, and my draft were 1,000 pages, 1,000 pages in my first draft, and just 50 pages. And this teacher said the other
The other
100,
950.
no, 100 pages did not interest me, no, but just 50 pages. It's interests me. You have to allow to open to dig. Yes, and
Who was that
I
teacher?
am an hero malgré moi. What is the term?
Yeah,
In spite of myself.
yeah, yeah. Who was the teacher, Lucien?
It was Bichler, Jean Bichler. Jean
Oh.
Bichler, and he said to me that Raymond Boudon will be very interested to read these 50 pages if you can extend this kind of.
Mhm.
But
And that was the philosophie cannibale, finally?
no, it's the first book. It was Éthique et les meurtriers de l'homme, the murderers of the men, and in the translation in Harmattan edition was Éthique et épistémologie du nihilisme.
Ethics and epistemology.
Yeah.
Of nihilism.
Yes. Yes.
Well, okay, but even there, yeah, epistemology is a kind of
But,
modern terms, refers to knowledge, yeah, knowledge, and again, you could say ethics is about freedom, yeah. So knowledge and freedom is really at the heart of the issue. Yeah?
Yes, but it's like a bad freedom.
Yeah. Well, then,
No,
in fact, yeah, this is what we're dealing with today.
It's like a remake of about the libertin in the 17th century. It's like
Libertines.
you read Les Liaisons Dangereuses, Laclos, for instance, and for instance, the necessity to make anything with your body, to make some challenges. I am able to manipulate anybody because I am free.
Yes.
And, it is also the discussion between Marx and Stirner. Max Stirner. So the very few, Marquis de Sade also Marquis de Sade. To able to become forced effectively to why not to be the divine if we are the picture of the God,
the image of God. Yes.
It's, and but oui, yes, no, just I want to finish because in Paris, for instance, now you have some and Grenoble aussi, you have some teacher will be attacked by the adept of the postmodernism and the constructionism. They are attacked and they are insulted. You are Islamophobe, you are racist, etc.
Ah,
And I wrote to them, and they answered to me, "You are right. You have work. Your work describe this present situation earlier, and it's why now we see the situation than you described 10 years ago. And it's why maybe, as Paul said, it's maybe an errorism now, but I saw the results because some people now react more fiercely because they are attacked now. The light left, the left non-authoritarian, as they say,
moderate left.
moderate left, they are attacked now by the
The hard left.
yes, they are attacked. Even in USA,
No, sure. Yeah.
even in USA, for instance, the teenagers will be attacked by the others, and the
Yeah.
LICRA in France, the LICRA is very anti against Marine Le Pen, against extreme right, and now this kind of organization will has been attacked by the hard left now. It's
Yeah.
why the situation change not necessarily negatively. Yes. Wait and see.
Mm.
But of course, the knowledge only is not enough to what is give the light for the freedom, and it's why the enlightenment is not a good concept. It's not
It
enough.
requires some courage.
Yes,
Uh,
courage. Yes.
yeah. Now, the big question, I think, and I go back to what I suggested earlier, is how are these two poles to be properly understood so that you don't wind up standing for science without freedom, or science that denies in its essence freedom, that threatens to destroy freedom and to make it turn itself into, therefore, the instrument of tyranny, and on the other hand, a freedom that feeds straight into the hands of, right, feeds itself straight into the hands of tyrants. So ultimately, the big question: how do you escape the domination of Satan? So going back to Faust, how do you escape evil? And Socrates, I think, is very helpful in the respect that he acknowledges that he knows nothing, yeah, and that he's on the right path. This is what he seems to be suggesting. But at the same time, he and Plato, of course, rejects. Now, this is this is the suggestion that I offer to you, to the table. Rejects the notion that science should somehow, and the science is scientia, yeah? Scientia is sapientia, yeah? Wisdom, science, knowledge, yeah? They're synonyms ultimately. That this should be subservient to moral, ethical practices, yeah? So that, let us say, we should ultimately, knowledge should be instrumental to, for example, the consolidation of a wonderful world.
Except that, Marco, that's the ideology now.
Excuse me?
That's the ideology now. What our global rulers are saying is that they're concerned. They're ready to make sacrifices. They're ready to have other people make sacrifices for the good of the planet.
Yeah.
People must sacrifice their ability to move around or do these other things for the sake of everyone's health. So there are these pseudo-ethical principles that are now piloting science, and so that science now doesn't even exist, because science is whatever they want it to be in order to achieve their ethical goals.
The constitution of their dreamed of society or world. Yes, so science is not, so Socrates would reject that. Socrates, Plato, the whole philosophical tradition that goes back to them would reject the instrumentalization of science. Of course, philosophers, early modern philosophers who call themselves natural scientists, or what natural philosophers or scientists, they would reject the notion that the philosopher should be should be under the thumb of some other authorities, right? But somehow a new type of authority has been created, has developed out of this early modern philosophy, and it has eaten up science and philosophy. It has made use of it to establish this new society and new mores, new morality.
Yeah, but except that Socrates sacrificed himself to prove to the city that philosophy was not a threat to the city. So even in the time of Socrates, with Socrates himself, there was the tension between the gods of the city, the ethics of the city, and philosophy.
Sure.
And philosophy contains in itself the danger of becoming degraded into science. Science is a prolongation of philosophy, in a sense. It's science. That aspect of philosophy gobbled philosophy up. So it's a danger that it contains in itself also.
Is this not what Socrates was fighting against, especially in the light of, I mean, okay, we don't have modern philosophy, or modern, what we call modern science, but we had sophistry and the possibility of that.
The pre-Socratics also.
Yeah, but the pre-Socratics, the early pre-Socratics, as we speak of them usually, these are people who understood it was better to stay. They wanted a kind of apartheid, yeah. They wanted to stay on the side, Anachorets.
But also they conceived, their conception of the world was close to the modern scientific conception of the world. They weren't trying to take over the world or anything, but
no.
They were close to modern science. So that these our problems today, it seems to me, have something, even though there are specificities to it, the global quality of it, the extraordinary powers that we have in this situation. We're no longer playing with BB guns, we're playing with atom bombs. But
okay.
the essence of it.
Yeah, well, we mentioned someone. We mentioned Strauss, and Strauss, I think, successfully highlights the point that modern science is an attempt to synthesize the pre-Socratic and the Socratic. In other words, to place idealism on a materialist basis. Ultimately, Socrates is much closer to the pre-Socratics than he is to any modern.
Oh yes, sure, but those things are in there. It's
yeah, but
like,
there's been a revolution. There has been a revolution, obviously, and the results we see, they're glaring. There has been a tremendous revolution, and this has to do with this kind of manipulation, placing political idealism on a pre or materialist foundation, and so having this idealism based on, and this is Machiavellianism, based on the notion that the human nature is pre-political, that we are fundamentally guided by apolitical or pre-political impulses, and not by the desire for the good. And so the political is a farce necessarily. Yeah, you can call it.
It's just a biological concept.
It's a mask that allows us to transform the material, transform. So you have eugenics and so forth, genetic manipulation. This is all under this heading. So the new society is being created and the creation of this new society entails the transformation of human nature, as if that could be modified. But human nature precisely uprooted from the eternal, so you can modify it in their notion.
What's the mask? The
political superstructure. All the bull that the media is spinning. When the politician comes up on stage and he tells you, oh, this and that, and people kind of know that it's all nonsense and it's all fake. These people are not, no saints, and they know that they're working with merchants, corporations that could care less about human health, survival. No, because they're actually, it's hard to manage so many people. So it's better if there are fewer people. But anyway, it's all cunning and all this kind of cynical monstrosity, ethical monstrosity that is being spun. But this is a superstructure, is all shiny, yeah? And underneath, we kind of all know that really human beings are driven by these beastly passions, but we have to cover it up and transform that so we can all flow into, as again Kant, yeah, the new society. In the new society, we'll have regulations.
It's why
yes,
it's why you talk about Faust. You talk about Faust. It's why you talk. You have many little Faust in the superstructure, and we are the puppet. The
puppets.
Puppet.
Yeah.
Puppet. Yeah, you are the puppet. Yeah. But as you said earlier, the people like to be a puppet because, as said Paul, heroism is very hard. Is very tough. It's very too hard for. It's the same problem anytime. You have like the film. I like this kind of film. The Seven Mercenary and the Seven Samurai.
The Seven Samurai.
And you have the remake. And you have the remake, the American remake.
Magnificent Seven.
Yes. And you have also the situation, you have a few people, and all the peasants are afraid and they want to fight against the Faust, the little Faust, the outlaw. But now the outlaw are the power, are the knowledge, are the weapons,
Mhm.
and the outlaw becomes the law now, and the lawyers in the Straussian spirit, the law, follow the law the, with the big L,
Capital L, yeah.
yes, and follow the law, and this kind of people become the outsider now, I suppose. But it's not new. It's not new.
No, it is not new, but it seems to me that the problem has been exacerbated to the nth power. And I think that there's a reason for this. I think the reason is to be found in a corruption. We could call it a corruption of language, to be understood. The expression, yeah. You could also speak about the problem in terms of a replacement of classical poetry or a poetic approach to language, replaced by what we call technology. And this has brought about a novel and arguably unprecedented corruption of mores and a degradation of human characters, of human character. So that people are, as a result, more prone to fall victims to tyranny, tyrants, I mean, or tyranny. I don't know if these terms sound a bit too vague, but the, the question was one of, again, of well understanding these, the interaction, the original natural interaction of these two poles, knowledge, yeah, and freedom, the challenge of freedom, living everyday life. And Socrates, I think, points us on the right track, so that freedom is somehow tied to knowledge, essentially. So you go towards a knowledge that is compatible with freedom, and you discover this knowledge that is compatible with freedom. And this knowledge somehow you discover, and goes hand in hand with the notion of what we usually call as recollection. Knowledge is kind of, for Plato, is a kind of recollection. In other words, it's presupposed. And Leo Strauss, I think, is very much to be commended for his emphasis on the sacred character of common sense. Sacred character of common sense. Somehow, what is common sense? Yeah, there's something mysterious about common sense. This is Platonic. There is something fundamental, something sacred presupposed by our common sense. In other words, we have the stems, we have the traces of something that is somehow presupposed, and therefore we could say lost, yeah, or forgotten somehow, and that is presupposed by our freedom. Now, what is our freedom all about for Socrates? A rediscovery, a recovery, a return to the foundation of freedom, something that for the moderns has been thrown out of the window. You don't recover the foundations. There's nothing intelligible about the foundations of human freedom. And this is the only way out of this. And what is it? What is this way of understanding freedom? I think the Renaissance, speaks of it, especially in terms of, and understands it, the Platonic Renaissance, in terms of poetry. There's a kind of philosophical poetry, yeah, that is not pre-Socratic, yeah, but a poetry that, a philosophy that is somehow in a language, a logos of rediscovery of this, this dynamics, this dialectic of freedom and knowledge that is being recovered, and freedom that is pointing in that direction. I think this is the only way out. This recovery, this guiding of young people. Young people want to be free, yeah, but they don't know what freedom is about. And if when they don't know, so when they don't have knowledge that is compatible with their freedom, the only knowledge they get is from this, is incompatible with their freedom. You see, this is terrible. Schools give you knowledge that is incompatible with your freedom from the time you're very small. And so you seek freedom in mad manners, and you burn your freedom out. And what is the result? You fall right into the hands of tyrants. And so there, the knowledge keeps, this kind of knowledge that is against freedom and that represses freedom is fueled even more as soon as you give up your freedom, you see? And so you're sort of fostering this growth of these schools that teach you a knowledge that is against your freedom, against human nature. This is, I think, the very terrible and the dramatic situation we find ourselves in. And the only way out, as far as I can tell, as far as I can suggest here, is a recovery of this poetic understanding. This is a Socratic understanding. Plato is a poet, we know. This properly understood. This is not narcissistic poetry, fetishistic, and so forth. Yeah, there's a wonderful also understanding of freedom that is compatible with knowledge, and knowledge that is fully compatible with freedom. But this is to be recovered, and this is what our authorities are against. They're completely against this. They've demonized this. If it even crops up again, because they've already obliterated as far as they're concerned. But if it comes up again, wherever it comes up, they'll demonize it.
What is the knowledge that's compatible with freedom?
Oh, it is the knowledge that somehow is presupposed by freedom. This is the Platonic tradition.
Could you give an example?
Well, you could speak about this in terms of, the classics say the Platonic tradition speaks of knowledge, and of course Aristotle too, yeah? What is knowledge? Episteme, yeah? Episteme is knowledge, yeah? True knowledge is knowledge of eternal things, and that is to say, ultimately of the good. And this knowledge of the good is actually, turns out to be a kind of communion with the good. And the communion with the good is at once a community of ideas, is a community. So this is the entering of a community of thought, of minds, of ideas, of problematics, of the world, entering the intelligible world, the world as an intelligible entity, purely intelligible. And this has somehow been obliterated or forgotten or obscured. The fact that the ultimate nature of things is intelligible. We have fallen into a world. Now you can also echo these Plotinus's images of the soul falling into the world, But I mean, the Christian, of course, tradition, we have fallen into a world in which, everything is kind of opaque, and we can only see shadows of intelligibility, of things themselves. This is the Platonic language. Yeah? So the goal here for the philosopher, for the human being, is to return to the original condition of things. And how there's a dialectic now involved, because this is really the way of life. Socrates is understanding philosophy as this way of life that is a way of return. Yeah, it is not a progressive way. It's not going anywhere.
Marco, how do vaccines fit into that?
We'll see.
Vaccines. Well,
it's like a drug.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's part of a circus that rejects all of this whole notion. You are supposed to be it's a kind of mask, the vaccine too, against death, against everything that is presupposed by freedom. They will take care of you. You don't have to be free anymore. The Grand Inquisitor has come in. They are given by the Grand Inquisitor. Okay?
Yes, you have the liberty to choose some stuff, the variety. You can.
The variety
choose.
of vaccines.
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful. I once had a class with many Muslims, and I was telling them, there's this problem we have. You go into an ice cream shop and you see, or a food, some kind of or in fact, a store, food where they sell food, and you see all these wonderful dishes, and you ask what is there, what is being sold, and they tell you, everything about the sauce that is over the content. They say this is this something with this beautiful sauce, and this other sauce, but that's not what you want to know. I want to know, sir, if there's pork inside. He said, no, we're just talking about the sauce.
Yeah.
And it looks like this is what we're faced with. They don't want you to ask what's inside, not inside the vaccine, of course, but what is behind this mask that they're setting up for you. It's a kind of a mask. The whole thing is a mask that is supposed to protect you from this défi de la liberté, from this challenge of freedom. What for? This is precisely, pure and simple, the discourse of the Grand Inquisitor. People cynical, and this is horrible, of course, but it is pure cynicism. People do not want to be free.
But so Marco, then if we reject the mask, we would then not be vaccinated, not wear masks, and not social distance.
Not, excuse me?
Not social distance.
That's a euphemism. Why don't we just sit down in cages, each one, as we're doing now? Live in virtual worlds and parallel universes and so forth. This is all a euphemism for the destruction of society. You're supposed to have community, not distancing. Distancing is great for prisoners who have to be in
Except
isolation.
that we're going to infect each other. There's this horrible disease, and we're infecting each other.
Yeah, well, we are the viruses to each other. Hobbes says that we're wolves to each other. Now we're viruses to each other. We have to stay away from each other.
Have you seen the carnival in Marseille?
Yeah.
The 4,000 people shares, laugh.
6,000. Yeah.
Okay.
What? 1,000.
But people
they are leftists. It's why the police didn't do
Didn't shoot.
anything.
Didn't shoot guns at them.
But look on this issue, lefty. When you say lefty, I don't want to. But the point is, and I can agree with that. They don't know what to do with their freedom. Again, back to Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky at some point has the character saying, socialism. Tyrants love socialism. Socialists, they love them because they go right under their thumb. They do precisely what tyrants want them to do. They're just going right into their gorge, into their fauci. You know what fauci means in Italian?
No. What does it mean?
The fangs. So the wolf opens up. Yeah, well, the wolf opens up the fauci. Like Pelosi. Pelosi is the hairy, the whole hairy. So I was here listening to an interview by some expert from Israel, some expert of Kabbalah, and he was telling people about how these names are somehow telling of the kind of you know, the wolves and the hairy mong, the devil and so forth. But it certainly is an irony, yeah, that they have this Fauci, these
Yeah.
and hairy ones. But anyway, okay, this is
Yes, it's an interesting point. The left didn't know what to do with the liberty,
the
except
freedom. Yeah?
freedom, except maybe in the art, in the in the thought. But now, with the possibility to build a new society, before before it was the prospect, it was the goal, the knowledge
No?
have to purpose to build a new society
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
left.
Yeah. Well, the new
But
Tower of
now,
Babel. The new
yes,
Tower of Babel.
yes, but now no future. There are no future. It's why it's necessary to implode, to destroy the reality, and to pass the what is the term in English, témoin, to pass.
Witness.
Not
Witness.
witness.
With témoin.
No, when you
Ah,
run,
le témoin, the
was the light, to
yeah,
pass the light,
To
yeah.
pass the torch. To pass
the
the
torch.
torch.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Pass the torch. Have a new, your new server, your new proletariat,
Wow.
and now we have to disappear. We have to disappear.
Yeah.
In-
The old people have to be gotten rid of in favor of the new good people.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
the
that's
new
what's going on.
normality. The new normality. The new normality.
Yeah, that's what, no, that was, I felt that very strongly all during the Gilets jaunes episode.
Mhm. Yeah,
They just,
we are in kind of Darwinism
Yeah.
situation.
but murderous.
Murderers.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Desire to kill.
Well, there's the
Yes,
Expendables. There's the
Meurtrier.
Expendables.
Meurtrier.
Yes, yes. So the weak must be disappear.
But
And Lucien,
Yeah.
let's not forget that wiping out populations, wiping out whole segments, whole peoples and so on. This is nothing new. It's been going on all through history. It went on in World War I, it went on in World War II, and there have been wars, murderous wars that are even going on today. So it's not a problem for these great leaders, the Alexanders and the Napoleons. It's not a problem for them to sacrifice even millions.
Yeah.
So
no, it's better. It's better. There's too many people to manage them effectively.
absolutely, and so these people who see themselves as being on this level, they have no trouble making the sacrifices that have to be made because they're doing something good, and we little peons, to them we're nothing.
Look. In earlier ages, I think people would recognize evil more readily. Clearly, in ancient societies, there was nowhere would you see this mediation and corruption, finally, of language that you have today, and that contributes substantively to the deterioration of the fiber of people, the physical, moral, and intellectual fiber. So that today it is extremely easy through the various mediations and through the corruption of language, it is extremely easy to dupe people. I mean,
Yeah.
look in France, yeah. You have this Macron, oh pardon, Macron, this president, yeah. I mean, if you look at this person, yeah, okay, he studied in a university. Okay, before getting to university, he was a 14-year-old who went had a liaison amoureuse, yeah, with this had an intimate relation with this professor, school professor who was married with kids older than him and had 3 kids, in fact, and so forth, married. Okay, and then he winds up marrying her. Okay, that's on the moral side, yeah. On the intellectual side, yeah, this is a guy who is specialized, and I think he had some kind of he wrote a thesis on 2 authors, yeah, and they certainly were not Plato and Aristotle. They were Machiavelli and and Hegel, yeah, the march, when he speaks about the march and so forth. So you kind of know, yeah, intellectually, this guy's c'est un filou, yeah. He's a kind of fox, cat and the fox, and Pinocchio, yeah. And this is not a guy that you would, yeah, that you would trust à la lettre, yeah, for what he says, yeah, intellectually. If you think about it, morally decrepit. I mean, this teacher that he married would have been in prison in the United States, yeah, for pedophilia. Never mind the fact that she went against her
Walking out on her family.
Yes, but never mind also the fact that she betrayed her mandate as a professor. That was illegal too. She kept all of that. This was all. He's a moral decrepit entity. But this is going on, and the people accept this. The people accept this. In other times, they would have never accepted any of this. None of this.
It's not just him, but the elites in general are a bunch of degenerates.
Sure. And this is an example.
Unbelievable.
He's a peanut man. It's not he's part of a gang.
But not just Macron, the whole lot of them.
Yes,
so
no kidding.
That are so terribly degenerate.
It's an example of how people can be easily fooled today because of their state of dire corruption. And I would retrace this corruption precisely to the loss of this poetry that Socrates helped develop. Okay, so the Socratic example through Plato, of course, and this was the, shall we say, the light and glory and delight of civilization for many centuries, in spite of all the problems. But I mean, and people were able to appeal to something, recognize, thanks to even the vestiges of the traces, in some cases, in the worst scenarios, of this tradition of poetic, this proper understanding of the relation between freedom and knowledge. This was not abdicated until it started being abdicated with modernity, and today we find it completely abdicated. We have completely rejected it. The authorities have done it, I mean, for us too, yeah, for people. And people find themselves in this terrible situation. They want the young people want freedom. They continuously burn it and feed right into tyranny. And tyranny builds new knowledge that is precisely there to drive people right into the hands of tyrants.
Yeah. Well, we see this on a lot of things. Lucien?
Yes.
Do you want to say something?
Yes. Maybe it's about you said earlier. I thought the kind of Faustian elite maybe want to make a revival about the famous situation, historic situation. For instance, if we are in the contemporary art situation, like Newton picture, you know, the Newton Warhol, the necessity to have our 15
Minutes of fame.
Means, yes. It's why it's necessary to organize a replica of the
A
second
replica.
a replica
Is that what you
the,
want to say?
yes, of the Second
War?
World. Yes, it's like, for instance, when people talk about vaccine, about the, the necessity to the kind of what is the term, the jouissance, to very excited to see that the million of people, when Paul said earlier, Napoleon, Alexander don't care about the murderer of the million, but how elite now wants to replicate Napoleon or Alexander. Yes, for instance, Maurice Blanchot, it was a teacher of
Lucien,
Foucault.
can you speak louder?
Là,
Can you, parle un peu plus fort parce que je t'entends pas.
Maurice Blanchot, do you understand? Do you hear me?
Yes.
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 Said it's better to become Brutus and not Tolstoy. Tolstoy is just a writer, but if you become Marx with a capital, if we become Brutus, you make the story. You make
history. Yeah.
Yes, you make the history become your painter, your matter.
Yeah, with this is anti-Platonic.
Yes, like Hitler said, the Germany is my film. It's my film.
Yeah, well, this is it is time. This is the leap. Yeah, you take the leap. You're done thinking. This is Raskolnikov. Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm done thinking. I'm done talking. Now I know what I need to do, and now finally I fulfill my knowledge in this deed, and I solve the problem with a hammer. So yeah,
Marco, I want to ask a last question here.
yes.
This poetic knowledge that you're talking about, can you?
Yeah, knowledge that is compatible with freedom. Knowledge that is compatible, not only compatible, but is presupposed by freedom, and that allows the freedom to thrive and to resist feeding into tyranny.
And can you give some examples of what that would look like?
Yeah. It is a knowledge. Yeah. If we look at, again, episteme, yeah, the classical tradition, episteme, knowledge of eternal things. In Aristotelian terms, yeah? Again, recollection of the ground, the intelligible ground of common sense. It is a kind of foundation of common sense. It is that which allows us to have common sense, that of which common sense is a trace.
Give an example.
The foundation of the imagination. Common sense is the imagination.
Okay, but in what way is that poetic? What would that look like exactly? In other words, I don't want to try to give an example because that might be. But can you give an example?
Well,
How would, for instance, a school curriculum look, or how would?
right, right. Well, this, of course, in the Platonic tradition, comes about through dialogue. So, as far as the school curriculum, the humanistic tradition revolves around dialogue that is concentric, not eccentric. So it is not dialogue about that ultimately ends up in opinions and spinning opinions and brainstorming and any other kind of rubbish. But it is concentric. So it is a dialogue that moves always towards the center problems of life. And therefore, a dialogue that illuminates the foundations of your freedom, the core of common sense, and that somehow defends. It is a kind of apology of freedom by going back to its roots, so that you don't.
Why do you call that poetic? What
Ooh,
is it that's poetic about
yes,
that?
yes. Well, the whole humanistic tradition is speaks of itself, especially in the Renaissance. It speaks that way. Yeah? In terms of poetry, you have the poetic theology, for example, yeah, Theologia Poetica in the Renaissance, which really is philosophy understood as this harmonizing. This is another thing aspect, yeah, of this poetry, a harmonizing of freedom and knowledge, a recovery of the original harmony of freedom and knowledge. Okay, so there's this, yeah,
but
through dialogue.
poetry implies it implies beauty. It
It
implies
is
art.
harmony is beauty. Harmony is beautiful.
Well,
It is integral.
harmony.
It is integral to beauty. It is integral to beauty. You cannot have beauty without harmony.
Well,
Yeah,
harmony.
come on. In the
Okay, but I mean that. But poetry is something that's evocative of something. I mean, poetry is not harmony as such. It evokes
no,
something.
but it is harmonizing.
And poetry could also evoke things that could be frightening or
Sure,
tremendous.
sure.
So I just, because you insist always on calling this kind of knowledge poetic, and
Yes.
I'm just not
Why?
quite clear what you mean
Yes.
exactly.
Well, this is a big chapter, but I was just suggesting that there's a whole Platonic tradition. The Platonic dialogues are poetic. I mean, you know, as opposed to, I don't know, Immanuel Kant, or yeah, this, and especially the language of textbooks today, of these experts today. What we have had was we can have another discussion about this again, to return to this. The meaning of the classical language. Today we have the new language. It is a technocratic, technological language,
Yeah.
and it is replacing. It wants to replace. It was meant to replace an older language, which was evocative of mystery. Now, technology is based on absurdity, the absurdity of life. And the poetry was based on the mystery of life.
For instance, teaching history with more of an accent on the stories, the adventures.
First of all, there is no such thing as history, period. There are histories, that is to say, stories. Okay? There are stories. And there's no such thing as history. It's made of stories. If you want to take all these stories together and have a super scientific history, that's a modern enterprise that has collapsed. Okay? It has simply collapsed, or rather, it has shown itself to be bankrupt at its roots. So I'm not really this is fascinating. If you want to keep history, by all means, keep it as histories. That is to say, as
Yeah.
stories.
In other words, that you're saying what I was just saying.
Yeah,
That,
yeah,
that
yeah.
rather than teaching history as some kind of science thing, it's
Yeah, no.
or
That has a moral message. It has a message. Stories that have a message. Stories that have a message. And of course, they evoke people that are in our imagination, that are in our collective memory, if you like.
hero.
You know, of course,
Heroes.
of course, of course, of course. I mean, you know, they're but
Stories
there's a
about heroes.
message. Yeah, but there's a message. There's a message. And it doesn't stop at this character, you know, it's sort of, it doesn't want to idolatrize any particular figure. It keeps the heroes, but with the understanding. And of course, then it's all about the historian, the quality of the storyteller. If he's so then you have the good history is a history written by a good man who has a good message to convey.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
not just the history of France, and then you don't know who wrote it. Doesn't matter because it's scientific. It's approved. It's the official one. Nonsense. You have the history of this by Thucydides, by this historian, by that historian, and you know the man is a good man. You know Churchill wrote it. Whatever. And it's a story about situations of life that is credible and at the same time especially carries a message
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
to help
I
us
get it.
live
Okay.
to help us live our lives instead of these fake history scientific history that helps repress our lives and feed them right into the new scientific world,
Yeah.
which is kind of this is the knowledge that represses freedom.
Yeah.
That's the kind of world they want us to live in. And they're doing it explicitly. They want us to live in a world that is directed by a knowledge that represses freedom, which is to say human nature, finally. We're born free in that sense.
Well, Lucien had a good term for it. What the techno, I forget. Is Lucien still there?
Yeah.
Oui.
Yeah. You had a good word for that, Lucien. Tu avais un bon mot, bon terme pour ça. Techno, the globo techno. I mean, it's turning everything into into a machine, or everything into units that can be moved around, pieces on a playing board that can be talked about in
Sure.
strictly dry, cold, technical ways, because there's nothing beyond that.
There's no interiority, of course. Why do schools approach all subjects of study, so-called study, from the outside, clinically? Because they presuppose that there's no interiority, there's no soul to things, there's no mystery. It's just the absurd. So you just deal with it. And this is why you end up with these advertisements. I shared with you the advertisement there of the shampoo that has these, where gender is just, you just create your own identity. You say, I'm a cow. I'm a cow. I'm boy, I'm a girl. Tomorrow I'm going to be a chicken. And we all go around and quack, 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 and nobody who is to say that you're not? I'm laying eggs. It's my choice. It's my freedom.
The little boy in the story of the emperor with no clothes, he's the one who says that you're not a chicken.
But that is a crime. That is a crime. You're not supposed to say that. It's offensive.
We'll go talk to his parents.
And take him away from his parents. Something's wrong. Must be wrong with his father, especially. But it is offensive.
Let's dress him in new clothes.
Well, I'm wearing a mask right now. You don't know. It is the latest model. Only the wise can see it.
It's your choice.
It's my choice. I'm wearing a mask. It goes up to here, and you can't see it. If you cannot see it, that must mean that you're dumb.
Marco, on the
It's
first
like,
day when the mask mandate happened, I was horrified. And I've got pictures of this. I made a video about it. And I couldn't, I was so horrified. I made myself a mask that completely covered my face with just two little eye holes. And I walked into my supermarket,
I remember.
and everybody went nuts. That was a bad scene.
Really?
The manager chased me around. All the cashiers and the customers, everyone was terrified. But in fact, I'm terrified when I go to the supermarket and everybody's masked. I feel awful. And I can't stand wearing it, and I can't stand seeing all those people wearing masks. Everybody's suspicious of everyone else. Everyone's
of course.
it's horrible. It's
course.
so destructive of society, and
No, but-
it's so pointless. Well, anyway, we
Well,
could
of
rail
course,
about it.
this really feeds into tyranny. The society in which everyone is suspicious about everyone else, and you can call upon someone and tell the authorities that that person is not in line with the party's regulations and protocols.
Yeah.
And if you call that Stalinism, that's offensive. I mean, you can't call it anything because you'll be shot. This is the same story. We are going to punish you because you said that we're out to punish you.
Yeah.
No irony? I mean, and they don't see it. They don't want to see it. Well, all of this, people have been duped so extravagantly, so blatantly, because they were ready to be chopped up. They were ready for the slaughterhouse. They were ready to be slaughtered. And they were so corrupt, they don't even know it. We don't even know it's corrupt. Because, and what does this go back to? I was suggesting, therefore, this misconstrual, this complete mess up of the proper relation between science, knowledge, wisdom, and on the one hand, and freedom on the other. Today we have a freedom that seeks to escape from knowledge, but it's repressed.
Yeah.
And so it does, young people, of course, they're torturing young people. They're repressing them, so they seek their freedom in pornography, whatever shit there is, drugs, whatever there is, communist gangs, I don't know. And of course, they destroy themselves. They make themselves weak with this, and they feed right into tyranny. And tyranny is there, right there, to produce more bull, more fake knowledge that will repress them under the authority of experts and tell them, wear another layer, wear another mask on top, and another one. And the more they're repressed, the more they become crazy in their private life, and they go maybe shooting or whatever, and then they're, and they feed right into tyranny. It's just a vicious circle that of course produces more and more tyranny and more stupidity. It's a disgrace for people, but this is a situation we find ourselves in, and it feeds into this technocratic world, and it's very sad. It's very sad for people. But what is the only response I can think of? The genuine response to this is, keep the poetic spirit alive. In that sense that I was just suggesting, pointing to, there's a whole tradition to rediscover, and let's people who just say, okay, we need more knowledge, no, we need to get back to that poetic approach to language. Forget about new knowledge new statistics. That's not the point. I'm not going against this knowledge with new knowledge, and it's not, we're not playing this game. It's just silly.
Marco, I made a video today where I talked about your article about the heroic painter.
Oh, painters. You know, the fact that Pontormo is I see him as a fully heroic painter doesn't preclude the existence of other painters that
Yeah.
are on the same level.
Yeah.